that's where the emergency fund comes in. But I think that those are great points and great examples there as well.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing to think about is it okay to have what would be considered your emergency fund in after tax investments, right? So if you've got a brokerage account where your money is actually invested, but it's liquid and you can access it at any time, is that okay to be considered an emergency fund? And I would answer that it depends, right? If you are in a volatile industry and you should have probably 12, and you're the primary breadwinner, and your let's say your spouse does not work, then you probably should have 12 months living expenses in what is emergency fund. But is it okay if 9 of those months are essentially invested in the market and 3 of those months are saved in the bank? And it is okay as long as you just understand that most likely, if you're, as an example, in the sales business, when the business is bad for you, most likely the business is going to be bad for the economy, and the business is going to be bad for you, and the market is going to be down. So you might not have quite the same level of emergency fund that you did when everything was going good. And it's just worth analyzing that and trying to understand the specifics of your situation if it's okay. It's not that, no, you should never have any part of what may be deemed an emergency fund invested. It's just understanding your specifics in your situation. Is that okay? For the most part, people that are financially responsible and live within their means, it's okay to have some of that money invested. And some problems that we often see when it relates to emergency fund is then getting too stuck on it, wanting too much money sitting there in your bank account, and not earning essentially anything, and then you get into the feelings of timing the market. Well, is now a good time to invest? And the answer is you just never know. You never know at that time. Should I put it in? Well, now I'm worried because of what's happening on, with Corona, or what's happening with the election, or what's happening with any millions of things that are happening at any given time. And you become more dependent upon your gut feeling as when it's to invest. The way I like to think about it, and this is where if you get specific, you have the confidence to moving forward, is, let's say I want to have 3 months living expenses, and those 3 months living expenses is $30,000 in my savings account at the bank. So literally I've got 30 grand saved there in the bank. Everything above that, I want to start investing and should be investing it on a consistent basis. I don't want to wait until now I have 130 and decide whether or not it's a good time to invest in the market. I know I've got my 30,000 in my emergency fund that I may have to tap into if something happens in the unforeseen. And then I've got every bit above that being invested on a consistent basis. And if you do that and you have that plan, I think you have the confidence moving forward, and you take out the emotional aspect of when to put money in.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And you took the words right out of my mouth with that. Was, what's the plan for the emergency fund, that amount, and then anything over and above it. And what Kenny said is exactly right. It's step one is coming up with the number of how much should I have in my emergency fund. Some of the ideas that we've talked about with that, ultimately arriving at that, getting that set up, getting that saved, and then anything over and above that should be then put aside or invested according to just your overall investment strategy and your overall financial plan. And if you know that you're secure in that way and you have that safety net in the form of the emergency fund, it allows you to make better decisions with the rest of your money and with the rest of your investments. So here again, this idea that an emergency fund is one of the key foundations to financial planning, it's for that reason. Once you have that security there, you are able to make better decisions otherwise. So we talked about a couple examples of where this emergency fund could be, Kenny, right? Like a savings account, Some people might have it in CDs, although there's pros and cons to that. There's pros and cons with anything. Some people might consider their emergency fund to be part of their investments, depending on the level of investments that they have. And then, also considering other sources of liquidity. One example might be that you have a bit of actual cash set aside, but then you say, well, I have a HELOC that's out there that's unused, but I know that if I get into a real bad situation, I can tap that HELOC, that home equity line of credit, in a short-term borrowing need, right? So just putting these different factors together to come up with the right amount for you.
Yeah. I think the main things to think about are, the first is, how are you earning the money? Is it one person is primarily responsible for the entire family, and that one person is in an industry that can be pretty volatile? And that honestly is probably the most common, at least, families with young children or children at home. Oftentimes one spouse is working and earning primarily the mass amount of money, and understanding that part. If both spouses working, do you both have steady jobs that income is pretty consistent regardless of what's going on with outside forces? And once you understand that, then you can really start to think about, what do I need for an emergency, to have an emergency fund? A couple of just additional points is, it's not just about what you spend, as far as just generally the amount I generally spend, if everything's going great on a monthly basis. In Financial Planning 101, what they teach you is, you should have your fixed expenses is per month is what really should be included in that emergency fund, when you're figuring whether it's 3 months, whether it's 6 months, whether it's 12 months, however long you need it to be. And so that is your mortgage, your utilities, your other, maybe it's children's schooling, what have you, the fixed amounts. What you don't have is, oh, well, we love to go on vacation, and we typically spend, whatever it is, going out for fancy dinners, and we save XYZ per month for our 401k, or we save, we give a certain amount to charity, or this is what I pay into my country club. Because things like that are discretionary expenses that really shouldn't be included in those fixed expenses. So the family that spends, we average spending $20,000 a month on whatever it may be. Well, out of that 20,000, there may only be 8,000 or 9,000 that really is fixed, and the remainder is discretionary, doing things that you want and enjoy. And that can be, that's what should be considered when going into when putting in money for your emergency fund.
Mm-hmm. So Kenny, I think that leads to a great question, at least that I've heard recently, and that is, well, how do I know when it's time to actually utilize that emergency fund, right? Because for some people, they say, well, that money is totally off limits. I can literally never spend it, regardless of the situation. And then for other people, they might be a little too liberal in tapping into it if they want to, put new flower beds out during the springtime, or if they do want to take that vacation or something like that, right? They think of it as, well, I got this money here, so I'll access that, as opposed to thinking of it truly for emergencies. So let's talk a little bit about, what should you spend it on, or when is the appropriate time to utilize it?
Yeah. I mean, really, it's in the name. It should be simply for, an emergency where you don't have, you have to tap into something additional from the income that you're making on a monthly basis. So to redo your flowers or to go on vacation, absolutely not. There should be a fund that is separate for that purpose specifically. It is for when the unforeseen happens that cannot be planned for, whether that is the loss of a job, whether that is something that happens to your home that needs immediate and emergency repair, whether it is, paying for medical bills, perhaps, something that really is unforeseen, that requires you to tap into money that you otherwise wouldn't need, you wouldn't have to. That's
Mhm.
really the only way I see responsibly using it. Now, is it okay if it's like, yeah, I want to buy this and it's $2,000 and I need to do it and I'll just replace that 2,000 with money that I'm getting on from my paycheck on Friday or what have you. You know, it's okay. I mean, nothing is just written in black and white. I would argue, well, you're better off just waiting till Friday to buy that, unless there's literally no reason it has to be done today. But you know, you should just put it aside and just forget it, and then you know it's taken care of, right? And then you don't have to worry about worry about building that up ever again. And you're saving for retirement. You're saving for the vacation you want to take in 6 months or a year or what have you. And that emergency fund really is put away for for the emergency. What do you have to
Yeah,
think
I
about
think you're right on because we're all creatures of habits, and so if we get into the habit of thinking, oh well, that little piggy bank is there for me to access whenever I need it, you're just more likely to do it, and perhaps be in a not so great situation when it comes time to actually needing it. Hopefully that
that?
never happens, but hey, at some point in life, it certainly may.
Yeah. And you got to know yourself a little bit too. You know, how likely are you to tap into something like that? How likely are you to call us and ask, "Hey, I need you to wire me money from my investment account?" And it just depends on kind of how you are as a person. That's why I'm really a big fan of separating things out. You know,
Mhm.
so is it okay if your emergency fund is part of your investment account? Is that okay? Yeah, it can be. It's fine. But I'm really a fan of, let's separate this out. Like, I have an emergency fund and it is in a different account. It is not mixed in with my regular day in, day out spending checking. I don't just have a big checking account. I have a separate account that is really deemed for the purpose of an emergency and labeling it as such. I have a separate account that is deemed for vacations, that I want to use this for my vacations. I want to use this for the children's school and use this for my retirement. And when you start to break things down like that, um, some people need that, some don't. But if you're the kind of person who likes to see things separated that way, then you're going to be you're just putting yourself in a better position to have success down the road. Um,
Mhm.
and you do that by just thinking about it. If you have a retirement account and you look at it simply for retirement, and you have, whether you're already retired or you're going to retire, and you have your stock portion, your part that's invested, quote, in the market, unquote, you are less likely to care about what's happening today in with the coronavirus and what happened in the last 3 weeks, knowing, well, this is money I'm not touching for 10 years, 20 years. Do I know that the market's going to be higher in 3 months or 6 months? No, I have no idea. But I feel pretty good about it being worth more than it is today in 10 years or 20 years. And
Yeah.
you're okay with that, right? I mean, what do you think about that kind of that? I mean, making your mind think that way, I guess.
I think you're right on because when it comes to money, we know that it's an emotional thing just across the board. No matter how rational we try to be or how steady we think we are, I think any time that we can set things up so that they're either as automated as possible or they're as separated in this instance, it just helps us visualize it better, and then as a result, it helps us act better.
Yeah.
That's what we've seen time and time again.
And I mean, you're so right, because in reality, it doesn't make I mean, it doesn't really make a difference. I mean,
It's all the same.
physically,
Yeah.
but just mentally. I mean,
Mhm.
there's so much power in that, knowing, well, this is my 6 month vacation fund. And then you also, I mean, it helps us, like, we can invest money in a different way. We can invest money, super conservative in a way. If I need this in 6 months, really cash or cash alternative, versus I need this for, um, you know, I'm 50 and I'm going to need this money when I'm 90 because
Right.
I'm retired. I'm retired and drawing on it. It
Yeah.
helps. It just helps. Yeah, the mental aspect of that is important.
Yeah. Can't be understated, I don't think.
Yeah.
Well, we're right about at the 30-minute mark. Is there any kind of closing thoughts or anything else that we should leave our audience with?
I mean, the main thing that I would just reiterate that we talked about a couple weeks ago, and we're talking about in these emails is stress testing your existing plan. And some of you, it may, who are our clients, it's maybe been so long that you or the planning was kind of put together over a time period. We're always, welcome. Call us. Let's set a meeting. Let's stress test the existing plan you have, or let's go about and create a new one. Essentially, here's where I am. Here's where I want to go, and then let us help you determine what you need to do to ultimately get there. So I just want to leave that offer on the table for existing clients, and then also for any friends or people you care about that may or may not have a plan at all, or may not have any idea of where they're trying to get to. We're here to help, especially during trying times and during times like this where there's so much uncertainty. Look, just be happy to talk to anybody and make them feel better about where they're trying to get to.
Yeah, no, I like that. And I would say, just to add one small point, stress test an existing plan or create one, but even just stress test your emergency fund. Let's see if it'll function and be adequate enough for what you intend for it to be in an unforeseen circumstance. So I think those are great points. Just winding down, you'll get a Barefax Friday email this Friday, of course, next Friday as well. And then our next webinar, I believe we've got planned for Monday, April 13th. It'll be the same time. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was
Yeah.
no, that's it.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
so we appreciate everyone joining in today. And as always, we're here for you. If there's any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns, please feel free to reach out to us at any time. We're here to help you.
absolutely. Have a great day.